Mr. President, thank you, and I thank the gentlewoman from Missouri for yielding to me, and I appreciate my colleagues, both my colleagues from Missouri and Kansas joining us here on the Senate floor this afternoon. You know, I wonder if there are folks out in the country who might not be a baseball fan and wondering, with all the challenges our country faces, why these four senators have gathered on the Senate floor to talk about baseball. But the reality is, this is an example of what can happen when we work together. There probably is we're divided here between Republicans and Democrats in support of this legislation. That's much easier to overcome than the fact that Missourians and Kansans are working together. There's been a long rivalry between our two states, much of it done with a smile, but some of it done with a little more intensity than just that smile of Kansas versus Missouri or Missouri versus Kansas. And the good news is that the Royals and their championship is one more piece of evidence that rivalry, when it comes to important issues, when it comes to the ability to work together for the benefit of Kansas City and Missouri and Kansas, I guess my colleagues ought to know that Kansas City, there's Kansas City, Missouri, and there's Kansas City, Kansas, and suburbs of both those cities on both sides of the state line. And as a community, these communities have come together to make sure good things happen. And the Royals is just one more example. It is something that matters to Kansans, whether they live close to Missouri, whether they live close to the Royals Stadium. The first overnight visit I ever made to Kansas City, and I grew up about 350 miles west of the stadium, but my first visit to Kansas City that I actually spent the night in this big city was to watch the Royals play ball in the old stadium. And I, all my life, have talked about "Come on Royals." And you can walk through the room in our house, television is on, the Royals are playing, and that expression out of my mouth is always "Come on Royals." It's something we all grew up with wherever we lived in the state of Kansas. You almost can find no fan of baseball in our state that's not a Royals fan. And there's something also about this Royals baseball team. Throughout my lifetime, hearing the voice of Denny Matthews and Fred White as they called the games in Kansas City and around the country, it gave you a sense, and still today it gives me this sense of peace, that there's something still right in the world, that baseball is still played, teams come together. And it's something that most of us grew up in our early days of being on a softball or a baseball team. And baseball brings us together. And so while I recognize, my colleagues and I recognize the importance of many issues that our country faces that we're dealing with in the United States Senate and the Congress in Washington, D.C., there is something comforting to know that still America can come together on a pastime, on a sport, on an activity that still means so much to so many Americans. And so we celebrate with this resolution and ask our colleagues to join us in approving this effort in honoring the 2015 World Series champions. It was an amazing season. This was something that hasn't happened since 1985, so 30 years ago in Kansas City, the Royals played in the World Series and won. I still envision my wife and her deceased father, now deceased father, and Raba and her dad, who my wife grew up in the shadow on the Missouri side of the state line, in the shadows of the Kauffman Stadium, and I can still envision what that was like for a little girl to grab the hold of her dad's hand and come to a Royals game to watch baseball. Again, it brings families together on an almost weekly basis over a long season in Kansas City, and it's been true in our family. So we're here today to commend great things that happened during this season. Since the last time the Royals were champions, many Kansans, many Missourians, many Americans have grown up gone off to college, served in our country's military, gotten married, started their own families since the last time Kansas City won a championship. And there is great pride, and we are here to affirm how good it feels to have that success once again. It is pleasing to be an American where baseball is a way that we live our lives and brings us together. It's great to be a Kansan who are so proud of the Kansas City Royals, and it's great to represent many folks in Kansas City who know life as something that surrounds them with the Kansas City Royals. This was a special year, a special team, and they loved playing the game. They exuded confidence. They never lost focus. Having fallen 90 feet short a year ago, the Royals players were relentless this year in their drive to get back to the World Series, and it was a joy for all of us to watch them accomplish that and finish that job last weekend against the New York Mets. So I join my colleagues in congratulating the Royals team, the Royals fans, Americans who enjoyed this sport and saw great sportsmanship on a baseball field. And we're thankful to Mr. Kaufman and now Mr. Glass and their families who have invested their efforts and time, their commitment to the Kansas City Royals. We appreciate the general manager, Dayton Moore, and the manager, Ned Yost, and commend and congratulate them on this amazing accomplishment. And we hope we don't have to wait another 30 years for another national championship involving the Royals and their crowning again. Once again, we'd say, come on, Royals. Mr. President, I yield back to the gentleman from Missouri.